Hello and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands, Forgetting the Past edition. Here we are with new co-host. I don't know, how long does it have to be, Phil, before I can start saying I'm Connor Ruebusch, joined as always by Phil Mackenzie? How long until always is not a complete disrespect to the memory of Dr. Wyman?
Will it be ever? Can you ever say always about anyone again now that your heart's been broken like that, Connor?
Will I ever love again? I don't know. I mean, I think that's why people are listening now. They want to see if I can, in fact, find happiness.
That's something you can only ask yourself.
Yeah. Well. All right. Well, at the risk of today's episode being an hour long of thoughtful silence, then, let's drop that for now. And we're going to move on to some MMA, a lot of which happened over the weekend, and much of it was very good. We are going to focus our attentions almost entirely here on UFC 226 because that's where all of the most monumental shit of the weekend happened. And, of course, that was topped off by the main event. Daniel Cormier melted Stipe Miocic with a beautiful and vicious right hook out of the clinch in the first round to become only, I think, the fifth two-weight champion in UFC history. And, how many others besides McGregor held those two titles at once?
None, I believe.
I'm pretty sure Cormier, if he does actually manage to defend both, will be the first. If not, it's still an incredibly impressive achievement. And also, I should point out, the first time that I think, since winning the title, Stipe Miocic has been unanimously picked to win by the people here at Heavy Hands. And so, Mr. Miocic, $5 on the Patreon a month, and we will start picking against you again. Everything will turn back to normal. But we're also going to talk about the co-main event, an abysmally bad, hilariously bad heavyweight fight between Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou. The funhouse mirror effect is realer than any of us could have possibly imagined. We're also going to look at Mike Perry versus Paul Felder, and a couple others from around the card, because truly, as we expected, looking at this from top to bottom, it was pretty much all good, and we just count ourselves lucky that Lewis and Ngannou happened to be in the middle of such a thrilling card. So the main event, Cormier, Miocic, overall feeling on how this played out. Anything surprise you based on what you expected, Phil?
So I feel like we got a lot of the general dynamics of this one pretty spot on.
Yeah.
I think, and in particular, we called out Miocic as not being a tremendous transitional fighter and having some real vulnerabilities in the clinch and on clinch breaks. I feel like that was right. I think Miocic's general advantage in boxing and power was probably spot on as well. But I think some of the things we missed were around I feel that they're the dynamics of the weight classes and the way that we didn't quite give those enough value. Because I think one of the main things about this was simply Daniel Cormier's hand speed. And on another factor, it was also Miocic's wrestling. And I think that this is one of the primary differentials between, we see when you change between weight classes, is that as you go up, kind of the speed, relative speed goes up. And often that kind of lends itself to being more of an effective, to having more of an effective striking toolkit. But as you go up, you also become a generally more ineffective grappler. So that was what really stood out to me watching it as that first round kind of went on, is that a lot of it initially looked like how I would expect it to, but then once Cormier started to throw, I suddenly started to think, hey, there's quite a bit of a speed disadvantage in speed differential in how these guys are throwing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard not to think of, talking about how the weight class this fight took place in affected the outcome and the performances. It's hard not to think of what everyone was saying about Cormier's power coming back at heavyweight but I also have a feeling that Cormier's sort of underrated power at heavyweight has always had something quite a bit to do with the hand speed advantage he has over other heavyweights. I think like things like speed and accuracy have a lot to do with knockouts, because it doesn't take a particularly hard punch if the opponent can't time it, doesn't feel or see it coming. And that was absolutely the nature of not only some of the uppercuts Cormier landed in the clinch before the knockout shot, but definitely the knockout shot itself was a quick, short punch that Miocic just had absolutely no idea was about to meet his chin. So, yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. Cormier, true heavyweight, right? Like he comes back to heavyweight, and the chin was not an issue at all. He hardly got hit clean, to be honest. He didn't take a ton of really nasty clean shots, and great hand speed. And what I was really impressed by from Cormier too was how well he responded to Miocic's pressure. Largely, I think, because the wrestling was there. But we don't love his defense, right? Phil? Like it's a lot of flailing. No. It's a lot of erratically leaning around, but he uses these moves in such a way that he doesn't have to be constantly jumping out of range. So I think it was remarkably easy for Cormier, when the moments did start to arise, to transition to pressuring Miocic himself. And it was as soon as he started backing Miocic up with combinations and like standing his ground and trading with him that this suddenly became like a very dangerous fight for both men.
Yeah, I think one of the things about just the general speed differential is that we don't like Cormier's defense, and it is that tendency to lean and to flail, because you can tell that he's stuck. He gets stuck between moving away and reaching for the clinch. But we also probably didn't give enough credit to the fact that Stipe's defense is also not fantastic. It is good by heavyweight standards.
Yeah, and it has
good by heavyweight standards is not quite the same thing as being good by most other divisions.
Yeah, is this the part where I grab the audio from after last week's episode finished recording of you saying,
"Yeah,
we all pick Miocic," and then you just say, "Hey guys."
Oh no, I think that was Pat actually.
Was it Pat?
Then we all pretty much agreed.
What if heavyweight sucks was the question on everyone's lips. What if all of Miocic's incredible run, like, it is impossible. It doesn't mean necessarily heavyweight sucks. I don't think your standards do have to adapt to the divisions you're talking about. Big men just can't do the things that small men do, and vice versa. But there's something to be said for the fact that Cormier represents a very different challenge to the type of shit that Miocic has been walking through in his past several fights. And that the same shit that made Cormier so effective as a heavyweight earlier in his career, and the same shit that has allowed him to fit in so well at light heavyweight, I think, is the stuff that made him so effective again in this fight. Yeah, we talked too. I want to talk about Miocic's defense, because there were a lot of openings that he was leaving, especially in those transitional spaces. We talked about Miocic as like a game plan dependent fighter. The guy I always think of is one of my many examples that probably means nothing to anyone who actually listens to this show, but I always think of the boxer Ruben Olivares, who was the same way. He had to have the game plan set in before the fight began, and he could fight a brilliant fight, but he couldn't really adjust all that well. And Miocic wasn't expecting to be dipping and dodging punches at long range like he was against Ngannou, and so he pretty much had no defense at all. Which was the thing that I think gave me so much trouble before the Ngannou fight, was how good is Miocic's defense? I think, to me, the answer has to be, well, it depends on what he's prepared. But he essentially showed no head movement of any kind against Cormier here. He got hit by almost every single punch that Cormier threw in range.
So, yeah, I mean, the thing that we kind of picked up on is he's someone who can do one thing pretty well at any given point. So when Ngannou was just throwing combinations, he's watching very carefully, but he was dipping and dodging most of them. He can wrestle pretty well in isolation. He can fight off the back foot. He can fight moving forward. But it's when he has to mix these up, because he's generally, his eyes are good for a puncher, but they are entirely focused on his own offense.
Yeah,
and
what the openings are.
He's not really a tremendous counterpuncher apart from in a few, select situations. But his ability to, as we said, to pick someone off with the jab and then keep focused on them and where they're going is excellent. But he cannot defend at the same time as he's doing that, which is, fair enough. That's an extremely difficult skill to have, which very, very few MMA fighters have.
And a common limitation. I would say it's a limitation that maybe even fits more naturally into the athlete mindset. It's like a single-mindedness where, I don't think Miocic. A lot of fighters don't do a lot of thinking in the cage. When we talk about them thinking or seeing or reacting or taking note of something and then taking advantage of it later, a lot of that is sort of subconscious. It's not necessarily thinking consciously about and making decisions so much as it is feeling your way through. But Miocic, I think, is not a thinker as a fighter. I think you set in him what the type of fight he's going to have, and what it seemed to me here, the type of fight he expected to have with Cormier, and I don't think this was a bad approach, was to pressure him. And then he felt really strong and looked really strong in the clinch early on. So it was like, okay, he can kind of pressure however he wants because he can afford to tie up with DC, at least when they're against the fence. It was really like tactically that DC beat him. He found the openings in the pressure, sort of, Overeem did the same shit. He dropped Miocic with a nasty left hand when Miocic was coming forward. The difference is that DC is kind of a thinking fighter and was looking for those openings as the fight was going on. I want to talk about the transition that he used to set up the right hand. I don't know how effectively we can explain the mechanics of this in a podcast format, but it was awesome. It was the type of shit that Daniel Cormier does exceptionally well that very few other fighters... I was immediately reminded of the knockout Dan Henderson scored on Shogun Rua. When he clipped him across the bridge of the nose, and it was like this whipping shot in a weird, moving, off-balance position from the collar tie, where he had just a little bit of control and contact in his opponent and just knew where the other guy's weight was going, where his weight was going, walked him into this very short, devastating punch. And Cormier did his own version of the same kind of shit. He used that, it was
also quite Fedor-esque because it was the kind of casting hook right into the collar tie, and then just clipped him around as he was trying to move back out to range.
Yeah, it is kind of a casting hook. It's a great kind of punch, it's the popping the elbow like that and getting the hand to focusing a lot on turning the hand over very quickly can give you a surprising amount of snap and power over in very small distances. And I love, it's like a signature move of Cormier's. He has the sort of the head arm grip, his arm around the other guy's head, and then he limp arms out. He'll give up the underhook. He does this all the time. He'll give up the underhook while driving into his opponent, limp arm to get the underhook back, and then there's just enough space from that change in position, and he has the leverage to hold his opponent in position or push them into the shot that's now coming from the suddenly free right hand. I don't know. I love that. I think that shows the kind of wrestling instincts, the tactical shit that I'm not sure many people north of 185 can deal with on DC's level. There's really just one guy, and his name is John Jones.
It's also reminiscent of... it's also a little reminiscent of Johnny Hendricks. He was a big fan of the kind of the strike into the single collar and then the follow up hooks, the hockey punching. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe this is one of the useful things we can look at in many ways seems to become increasingly dominated by reach. fundamentally. It's useful to have this that seems to be with, Henderson being the weight class jumping guy and Hendricks being as literally the shortest armed welterweight, let alone middleweight. And then DC, it seems to be like a really strong short person tactic.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like, I don't know. I could talk. I look at this knockout over and over and over again. The power that DC brought up to heavyweight. I don't know. What else is there to say about this fight? I mean, we can talk about where these guys are going next. Do you have any notion of what you'd like to see out of Daniel Cormier now as dual?
Oh, yeah, that title defense against Shogun Rua. Like,
no.
That sounds like it's going to be incredible.
Oh, I was bracing for you to say Brock Lesnar, and you really caught me off guard by switching to Shogun. Two utterly tempting title defenses. I mean, who can say no?
I mean, you have heard this, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. No, I would like to see. I would like to see the Brock Lesnar fight, not because I think it would be interesting, but just because Cormier's he's such a good dude.
Yeah.
And I'd just like to see him go out on a big win with tons of money, where everyone will look at it and they'll be just like, "Wow, look at how giant and red that guy is. How is he possibly going to win?" And then the answer will be pretty easily, and it will look super impressive to tons of casuals, and they'll love DC, and they should love DC.
Yeah,
and I'd be fine with that.
Everyone should love DC, the universal dad. But he like it's kind of like a mockery that Brock Lesnar is getting this fight, isn't it? He had like an uninspiring, a decisive, I guess, but uninspiring win over Mark Hunt. Then there was the steroid thing, which has been the only story about Brock Lesnar since that fight. And now he's going to get, this is a title shot. It's not just a fight because DC is now like the incredible 2-division champ. Like, it's a title defense.
Yep. Well, I mean, the only other option is Curtis Blades, and admittedly, this would be a much more interesting and better fight, just because Blades is just at this point upgraded Lesnar, who isn't made out of old ham. And
yes. Yeah, and
it would be a much better fight, but at this point, I'm fine with DC just getting a relatively easy, high-profile win, and it's not like the other upper echelon heavyweights covered themselves with glory in this event.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Although I will say, don't do Shogun. I don't want to see that. Brock Lesnar is fine. I have no sympathy for Brock Lesnar whatsoever, just because of how red he is. Knock him out. I don't give a shit. But leave Shogun alone. He doesn't deserve any more pain. Okay. All right. Well, that's pretty much the main event. Daniel Cormier. I was excited for this fight. I knew it was possible. But more and more as the bout approached, I was expecting Stipe Miocic to win, and I should have known. I made the mistake of picking him, cursed the bastard, and gifted Daniel Cormier. I'm taking credit for this. Gifted Daniel Cormier with tremendous transitional fighting abilities.
I should have known, because it's only you and Pat that have this particular ability. I never should have joined you. No matter that I'd already come in just thinking Stipe definitely, almost certainly has this.
Yeah.
But, yeah, as soon as you guys started saying how you thought Stipe was actually going to win this one, I just should have run for the hills.
You should have tried to sneakily change your pick on the spot. Who would have known what would have happened then? All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about those other heavyweights covered in glory, as you mentioned, Phil. Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou. As I said, one of the worst fights ever. And I can't wait. Phil, you and I are going to get to watch it together on the MMA Depressors someday. Someday very soon, hopefully. So we'll talk about that, as well as Mike Perry and Paul Felder. I guess we got to talk a little bit about Paulo Costa and Uriah Hall. And my boy Rafael Assunção had a masterful win over Rob Font. We're going to talk about that as well. All of that and more after this. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show.
We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
And welcome back to Heavy Hands. I'm here with Phil Mackenzie, as usual, as lately. And we're talking about the co-main event of UFC 226. Phil, we've been getting praise, you, me, and Pat, because evidently we were among a fairly rarefied group of people who were sort of expecting this fight to be awful. But I want to, as I usually do, I don't like taking compliments, so I'm going to go ahead and nip that in the bud. I'm going to say a couple things. I did pick Francis Ngannou to win this fight. And so automatically, I got one huge factor way wrong, which is how mentally devastated Francis Ngannou would be after that humiliating loss to Stipe Miocic. 2, I, like you guys, agreed that about a second-round knockout sounded kind of appropriate. So I assumed, like every other Derek Lewis fight, that this would be very slow, and then something would happen, and then everyone would forget that all of his fights are bad. But instead, it was just 15 minutes of a Derek Lewis fight, and Francis Ngannou agreed to have that fight every single step of the way. In fact, Francis Ngannou, for all intents and purposes, was dominated by Derek Lewis because he got essentially nothing done over 15 minutes, whereas Derek Lewis actually landed some hard kicks.
We thought this fight would be bad, but we did not think... I could not have thought it would be this bad.
Who would?
I was expecting 7 minutes of nothing, but this was basically 15. And yeah, Matt, I mean, this is what we have. We watch trash fights together on the MMA Depressed Us, and we've seen a lot of the supposed worst fights of all time, and we've seen it being compared to things like Arlovski-Sylvia 3, and we are here to tell you. Arlovski-Sylvia 3 is way better than Lewis Ngannou. Oh, yeah. Way better. Way more active, way more interesting. Both guys are actually really trying to win. It is, there is no comparison.
And don't you dare, audience members who might be thinking it already, don't you dare mention Anderson Silva versus Talaslitis, because that fight is a dream compared to this fight. That fight is a sensation of brilliant technique and careful decision-making. This fight was shit because, and this is important, it was not a fight. At all. It was not a fight. I don't know. Maybe I'm being harsh here. I want to hear your thoughts on this, Phil.
Well,
it was like all Francis Ngannou's fault, right? Like, I guess the bar is low for Derek Lewis, but this is what he always does. And the onus was on Francis Ngannou to adjust to that and come up with the right solution. And his solution was to be an even worse, even more patient version of Derek Lewis.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so the first thing is that how often in fights have we actually seen Ngannou lead? Like in his UFC career.
Yeah.
Because he went after Miocic when he thought he had him hurt. After he'd landed counter shots. The same thing with, because this was the thing that always got to me in the Arlovski and Overeem fights. The first Arlovski fight, it was, oh my God, look at that guy. He landed this incredible, weird, out of position counter that just utterly flatlined him. He's just a natural counter striker. And then the Overeem fight happened, and you just looked at it and I just went, he landed an incredibly out of position counter.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little less impressive now that he's done it twice. It's a bit like I'm getting slight Kelvin Gastelum feelings here. That I've never been convinced that he can actually lead, and I think he himself thought before this fight. It was exactly like we said. It was the Spider-Man mirror thing, that he was looking at Lewis throwing punches and thinking, that guy rushes forward. He throws kind of blitzing combinations. He's going to do that at some point, and I'm going to knock him out. And Lewis probably thought much the same thing, looking at Ngannou against against Miocic. Mm-hmm. But in both cases, they were looking at at the second step. They were looking at, this is what happened when this guy counters. Neither one of them was looking at what happens before then. But I think we missed one big factor about this, which we probably should have picked up on. And that is mirror matches are won by experience. And we've seen this a bunch of times, and we've talked about it with Zane, that it's fights like what am I thinking of? Sirkunov Teixeira or Elkins against Skelly. These fights where you've got one guy and he just seems he's younger, he's more athletic, he's on the up and up, and the other guy is, clearly, probably, physically in some ways a few steps behind. But the fact is that their game constructions are almost the same. Mm-hmm. And in that case, the older, more experienced guy, he just knows where the younger guy's going to go. He's been there before. He knows what the risks are, and he knows what he really doesn't like.
Yeah, and who gets the way that their own game works. Like who, for example, Derek Lewis does like to kick, but he must know that in terms of what has the biggest effect, what he's best at, kicks are towards the bottom of the rung.
Also, remember what Travis Brown did to him.
Right. Yeah. Francis Ngannou has not had the experience to learn that yet. Like here's the thing. The dynamic of the fight was so simple and so frustrating because it was a simple dynamic that never changed. Francis Ngannou came in expecting to counter, which he always does. And as I remember specifically last week, you talked about, the way he counters. He plants his feet. He creates a little space with his upper body. Does a lot of just like sort of slightly leaning back on the edge of range, and then he'll fire back with the uppercuts. And what we saw in his earlier fights was promising because it was him countering without being too patient. He was moving towards his opponents. He was walking them down. He was jabbing, which, boy, does he know how to jab. It was literally the only thing he did in this fight. But it was hard to tell how he might adjust to anything different happening because each time his opponents felt compelled to throw something that Ngannou then managed to counter. It worked on them, and they didn't have a foil to it. Derek Lewis solved the entire style of Francis Ngannou. Truly, he solved everything. He gave Ngannou none of the openings that Ngannou was apparently 100% sure would be there by just kicking. He did almost nothing but kick. He did a few jabs. It was nice. Lewis actually listened to his coaches. They're like, hey, stick the jab in his face and then kick. And he did it about 3 times. Otherwise, he just didn't commit his head to the pocket. He did nothing that caused him to fall forward or lean in. And Ngannou was so wary of those shots and so committed to the idea of countering them. I mean, did you take note at all, Phil, of what the range was that this fight was contested at? They were standing like 8 feet apart. They were so far away. The only man who could have possibly been effective was the man who was throwing kicks. And Ngannou had no way to tell Derek Lewis, like, no, don't do that. Do this thing that I want you to do. He couldn't. He had no adaptive. Yeah.
Do you know who Derek Lewis fought like?
Who's that?
Lyoto Machida.
Oh, don't you dare say it.
The Black Dragon.
Don't you dare.
That's exactly how Machida would in some ways still does fight, is that he'll just wait for the counter to come. And if you don't, he'll just make sure that he's just very slightly up on the cards by kicking.
I have to have some respect for it. Like, it's a little bit how Rafael Sunsao fights. It's like, he doesn't force the issue. I mean, that's the thing. I'm not really upset at Derek Lewis for this. This was just a Derek Lewis fight. Many of his bouts have looked like this. It was the only difference is that most of the time, just as in most Machida fights, the opponent is compelled by this like one kick every 45 seconds to do something. And that's usually when Derek Lewis knocks them out too. And it's when Machida usually catches somebody coming in. Ngannou he had one thing he wanted to do and didn't adjust once. He didn't do anything different. He he tried the jab. He tried to do it a little more aggressively, I guess, by the time the third round finally came around. But seriously, a warning for timidity and everything else aside, Ngannou made not one single adjustment over the course of this entire fight. And that was a fight in which he did nothing.
But once we saw that jab, you immediately realized, because he was bigger, younger, stronger, faster, and so on, and he can throw punches better. You realize just watching him throw that jab, if he just stepped in 6-8 inches closer, he probably just could have won like a 30-26 decision off that jab.
Oh yeah, because nothing else was happening.
Derek Lewis, but also Lewis's punching style is not built to deal with something like that.
Yeah.
That's exactly the kind of thing that if he'd just started marking Lewis up with it, Lewis would have started doing his thing of charging forward with blitzes, which Ngannou could have then gone back to countering. But it was just, I mean, it was. I can't hate on Lewis because he was just winning. You can't hate on someone who just wins. You can't say you're winning all these rounds fairly easily against an incredibly dangerous guy who's literally ranked as the number one contender in the division. Mix it up. But for Ngannou, it was very concerning.
Yeah. I mean, do you imagine that this had more to do with the style matchup or more to do with what happened to Ngannou in his last fight?
It was both. I mean, it's partially him being scared of losing again. I think it was more than that. It was him getting a very misguided notion of what fighting smart meant.
Always in MMA with what technical means to fighters. And thank you, Joe Rogan.
I mean, he said afterwards he carried the fear from his last fight with him.
Yeah,
or something along those lines.
I mean, I think I think you're right. It's probably both because, like, looking at what Ngannou does like to do to opponents, he would have had a fight like this. He probably would have had the 7 minutes of nothing, and then shit would have started happening if the Miocic fight hadn't preceded this. This is the way he would have approached this style matchup. It's how this particular style matchup would have looked. But the Miocic fight was clearly having an effect, like, much more than I could have expected. He could not make himself take a risk. Like, I can't recall one thing he did in this fight that, like, I don't know. And some of that was his like window of possibilities was too small. Because if he had, he had tunnel vision that didn't allow him to adjust. Because if he had just eased up on the 3 or 4 punches he did try to throw, if he could have gotten a way to relax and not try to put much power and just step in a little bit closer and touch Derek Lewis, the whole dynamic of the fight could have transformed. But he was so tense and so focused on doing this one thing that it was the one thing he thought about doing but didn't do for 15 minutes. So Derek Lewis should have won. I don't know how 2 judges gave Francis Ngannou a round. I truly don't, because he didn't do anything. Derek Lewis should have won about 30-21 and should get the next title shot. It should be Derek Lewis versus Daniel Cormier. And we will finally get to see what happens if somebody who knows how to wrestle tries to take Derek Lewis down. That is a question I need to have answered. So, I don't know. Thoughts going forward? I mean, I guess it is worth talking about what Francis Ngannou does after this, or what we should expect to see out of him next.
I mean, this is the thing after the Stipe fight, is that I feel like people were still in many ways too high on Ngannou after that fight. And this is just a reinforcement of that, because the idea, it was sort of like the old Pettis thing, right? It's that he just lost because he got out wrestled. All he needs to do is get better at wrestling defense, and you just looked at it and you just thought, no, that's not it. He would have lost a kickboxing match. There's no way he would have beaten Miocic in almost any. It's not like he was going to be coming back and beating Miocic a year from now. It just wasn't going to happen. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, he needs to get out of the Performance Institute. He needs to get with a kind of, I don't know what kind of trainer he needs to get with. I don't know whether he needs because I don't know whether he needs to get like someone who's going to baby him to get his confidence back, or someone who's just gonna kind of beat him into being a ruthless machine. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, he's a very inscrutable kind of man. Like, I do plenty of... I like to partner my technical analysis with plenty of armchair psychology, which often works, but it's tough to get a read on Francis Ngannou. Like, what's going on inside his head? He's mostly just, like, polite and quiet and soft-spoken. And then, yeah, when he does fight, like, since his earliest days, he has had a habit of going absolutely berserk. Like when he starts having success, like he's a killing machine when he gets somebody hurt because of it. But then the opposite of that is so much the opposite of that. So I kind of have this fear now, seeing that this is the other extreme, that Ngannou is capable of hitting the extreme he hit in the Miocic fight, and then months later hitting this extreme, the far end of that same spectrum. And that kind of makes me think that he might not be able to get over this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm concerned that because I still feel like it was a lot of it was him trying to fight smart and not really understanding that. And again, I've just got to feel like he needs to get with a serious coach who can just tell him that's not the case. You know, I don't know who or where he could go. Someone like, for example, Trevor Whitman would be nice.
Yeah, Whitman's got a knack for working with big guys who hit hard too.
Yep.
The thing is, like, even with Whitman, I think it would be, we shouldn't, like, I don't want to write Ngannou off. He's clearly a ridiculous talent. But the thing is, like, Whitman, it took Whitman a while to sort Rose Namajunas' problems out to the point that to the degree that they are now sorted out, and to get her to feel comfortable with his style of boxing. He teaches a very solid technical system that includes defense and counters and combinations and footwork and everything that a boxing system should include. But it's going to be a while, I think, before Ngannou can get something like that down, can build enough into his game to be able to do these things. Because, I mean, but also, I mean, I do want to say, it does feel in retrospect, and I should have been saying this more, I realize now, before this fight, but it does feel in retrospect like very, very short-sighted matchmaking from the UFC as well. That's what you get out of Francis Ngannou, is the most undisciplined, frustrating performance against Miocic, and you immediately throw him in there with a guy has his exact same style but 4 times the experience. And that seems like the problem is not that Ngannou needs time, is that Ngannou needs time the UFC probably won't give him, because they're going to throw him in there against another top 10 guy after this, and it's probably going to be another puncher, because they need to give Ngannou the chance. He really needs to prove that he's still exciting and worth caring about. So,
to be honest, I think this is a good fight for him.
You think so?
Because he didn't take any damage. Everything is, and if he's a competitor, he's just going to look at that and he's going to be incredibly angry at it. That is, it's something that would be quite shameful for a lot of people, is just to go out there and not throw anything. He didn't get hurt. It wasn't a Mike Perry. It wasn't a Mike Perry kind of loss. It was
True.
It was just him. It was him trying a singular approach and then realizing that it wouldn't work. Because I suspect the thing is that if they'd given him someone lower down, they just would have gone, oh my God, look at this man mountain.
That's
I
true.
have to attack him somehow, and they would have got knocked out. This is going to have to make him say, I cannot just wait on people. I might be a very gifted natural counter striker. I might be able to pick up counter wrestling and Kimura's backstage, and I might be incredibly talented, but there are giant areas of my game which just don't exist, like the ability to actually move forward and press and attack with some degree of safety.
That is a fair point. There's definitely a possible progression in which it goes from, okay, I was single-minded against Miocic, but thought the problem was what my single mind was. Then I was single-minded again against Derek Lewis and realized that even though I didn't fall apart, I need to be more than single-minded. I need to have a more diverse way of approaching fights. I need to be, I don't know, more relaxed. Whatever the takeaway now can be, all right, I need to change something fundamentally about how I'm thinking about these opponents and how I'm approaching them. But I do think about the mental side of things. A fighter's ego is a huge thing, and managing it can be very difficult, and I don't get the impression that Ngannou has, especially now that he's left his original coach, like anyone around him who has that sort of mentorship relationship. Like, more likely, if there are people at the UFC Performance Institute, there are people who see him more as something to exploit. And so, I don't know. Like, I see that window of opportunity you're saying, but I don't yet feel confident that Ngannou will be in the right circumstances to take advantage of it.
Yeah, but I mean, in that case, it's probably just that I'm not sure if there was ever much of a better direction for him in that case. It's not like there was a hypothetical, because he is just lacking large areas of skill in his game. There's just certain things that he just can't do that well. So I think that as far as this goes, it's as far as this goes afterwards, it's just going to be kind of a referendum on him. Mm-hmm. Can he go elsewhere? Can he decide that he's going to try and build his game up from scratch, or will he not necessarily from scratch? But I still think he can do it. He's still very young in his career.
Oh yeah,
and there's a lot of other fighters that we've seen take kind of bad, confidence-crushing losses. Not least, Namajunas, like we mentioned, mm-hmm. where you just thought, wow, she's super talented, but is she ever really going to get over the hump? And then someday, they just do. They just love the sport enough that they keep plugging at it until their natural abilities kind of turns it around for them.
Yeah, I hope you're right. I hope your optimism is well warranted.
I mean, it's also heavyweight, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, but also the worst thing will probably happen because it's heavyweight. That's what happens in this division. So, I don't know. All right. A fittingly whimpering, quiet end for a fight that could only be described as a 15-minute whimper. A couple more to get to next. We're going to try in the third segment to knock out several of these. Mike Perry, Paul Felder. Other stuff, blah, blah, blah. We're going to talk about the rest of this card after this. Bye. Be right back. Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. You can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show. All right, well then welcome back to Heavy Hands, and we are moving on down the main card here of UFC 226. Mike Perry and Paul Felder had a split decision where they hit each other's heads against each other. They hit the elbows against the heads. They smashed each other with the strikes. It was great, right?
Yeah, this was a tremendous fight. This was just a lot of fun.
It was fun. It was a great fight.
What did you think of the decision, by the way? A lot of people seemed upset that it was a split, but I thought that was fine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I could have seen it going either way. Absolutely. Yeah. And I thought that, Felder, I think there's definitely an argument for Felder getting the third round. He landed especially a lot of body work, a lot of great knees and shots like that, and some good, he landed a nice 1-2 at one point, despite the broken hand or arm, whatever was going on with him. But Perry landed some tremendous, thunderingly huge shots, especially the left hooks were there for Mike Perry.
That one left hook that just opened up the side of Felder's head. What the hell?
Yeah, it was this leaping left hook that I think he caught him with the edge of the glove, because he seemed to catch him kind of with the inside of the fingers rather than the knuckles. And
it simultaneously opened up a huge hematoma on one part of his head and a giant cut on another, which is really quite impressive.
I think the hematoma was from the elbows that Perry was using to try to follow up and open up the cut more. And he has absolutely no accuracy. So he smashed Paul on the top of the forehead rather than next to slightly below the eye. But yeah, I mean, it was a close fight, and Perry landed a lot of big shots. I have no issues with the decision whatsoever. It was another one of these fights for Mike Perry, right? I mean, that wasn't any surprise. We were expecting Felder to end up going to war with him. Felder is not a fighter who backs down from any area in which violent combat is possible, which I think you have to respect, whether it's grappling with Charles Oliveira or willingly, repeatedly clinching with Mike Perry. He doesn't give a fuck. But how did Mike Perry look? Because I think that's the big story. For you and I, Phil, for those who don't know, we did our platinum as a commodity piece. Mike Perry is our wayward son, and he needs our guidance. And he's not getting it. He hasn't heard the message yet. He did literally the last thing that you and I, his proud parents, would have suggested when he broke up with his girlfriend, his previous coach, his girlfriend, and assistant coach, Alex Nicholson's dad, and went to Jackson Wink, which is the last place it seems a guy like Mike Perry needs to go to drastically.
Yes. I think that's a little harsh. There are many places which I think would be
he could
much
have gone to
worse.
OSP's gym or whatever, of course, or a different UFC gym in a different part of Florida. But
or for example, what's his face? Ronda Rousey's Taverdian.
Oh, of course. Or he could have gone to Burke Camp, the Muay Thai camp that no one's ever heard of, where Paige Van Zandt now trains, and also her boyfriend.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, there of course.
Sick Jitsu, maybe.
Oh, Sick Jitsu might actually work for Perry. That's the thing.
Maybe
he might fit in there.
I mean, yeah. So I thought he looked like he had improved back to where he was when he first got into the UFC, and that is as good and bad as it sounds, because it means that he's now sort of spent a lot of damage for not very much. And he just seems to have now his confidence is back, which is something which Jackson Wink tremendous at teaching people, but he doesn't really seem to be all that much better than he was back in those early fights.
It is like playing an RPG, right? You put all your experience points into this certain tree, and you're completely aimless. Like Mike Perry clearly did not look up a strategy guide online for how to manage his career, because he went into head movement, he went into clinch, he went into but didn't understand how any of these things could fit together. He didn't spec into any solid tree, just put his points wherever. And now he's decided he's going to go with the path he had originally planned for himself, but you don't get those points back. You've already had those experiences. You have wasted those brain cells. You've been in those wars. And yeah, I agree with you. There were some Jackson Wink things that were nice. One stomp kick to the knee was very effective. A couple of other kicks, and just a general sense of more creativity to his striking. Like, that kind of stuff can go a long way for a slugger. Somebody whose style is built around confidence in their power, the sort of style that leads someone to walk through shots because they know the one they're about to land will be much better. It's good to just have creativity and just have enough variety in your strikes that the other person can't adjust to them, because a lot of times what matters is whether you get hit or not, you land. And if you connect... So I liked that. There were some, like some nice uppercuts. The left hooks were really nice. It was still a lot of single shots, and it was still, like there wasn't a jab. There wasn't a lot of variation in how fast or how hard the shots were thrown. It was, as you said, a sort of positive regression where he looked better than he did against...
it's notable that leaping left hook that he landed, he threw a pump to right hand just as he jumped into that left hook. It's like sometimes he can suddenly do that. Sometimes some little like piece of rhythmic manipulation will just suddenly jump out at you, where he'll just throw a little stutter step or something in there, and you'll just be like, wow, and then it'll disappear for about the next 3 minutes.
He threw almost a half dozen feints in this fight, which is more than I can remember in most. So, like, there are some things that are good. I do think he definitely looked improved over the Max Griffin fight, and in some ways improved over the Ponzinibbio fight as well. Back to where he was. And that's the difficulty, is like, what else do we expect out of Mike Perry? Like, is it time to start preparing ourselves, at least emotionally, to give up on hoping for his potential? Or like, are there any changes to be expected at all from Perry's game going forward?
I'm not hugely optimistic, to be honest. I mean, because this division is hard. There are a lot of good, dangerous action fighters just lining up to be given shots at getting over by fighting someone like Mike Perry. So, Max Griffin beat him relatively easily, who in this last event lost to Curtis Melander.
Yep, pretty clearly.
Much further down the card.
Yep.
There's guys like Bilal Muhammad, Zaleski dos Santos, Lyman Good. Like, there are a lot of dangerous, athletic, skilled strikers at welterweight who they'll just get matched up with him again and again. I mean, I just don't see how this is. I don't think it's going to change. And I think it might change if he was perhaps elsewhere. But if we want to talk about Vannata and Close at some point, I'm increasingly not convinced by the ability of Jackson Wink to build prospects.
Yeah, do you want to talk about Close Vannata a bit while we're on the subject, since we're looking at Jackson Wink?
Let me just say, let's just talk about Felder for a sec.
Okay, yeah.
I think this fight also brought back something that we were talking about offline when we were talking about Felder Perry. We were talking about it, I think, last week before. Was it after? Anyway, we were discussing it at some point. But the thing is that Felder is not. He's not a comfortable striker. And this was really came forward in this fight, is that he can do a lot of things on the feet. But what would you consider like Paul Felder's main striking weapon or striking approach to be? I mean, because if I had to say what his signature would be, it would be like the spinning back forearm that broke his arm. Like, that's is what he used to knock out Danny Castillo in his most famous knockout up till that point.
Yeah, it's funny that we are now at a point where it doesn't seem spectacular or even interesting anymore. Like, we've now all realized that Rodriguez Caceres was a bad fight with just a lot of spins. But I remember Felder was doing that even when, like, he fought Edson Barboza way earlier in his UFC career. And it was notable at the time that they just threw nothing but 19 missed spin kicks. Like, they threw a lot of other good shit too. It was a good fight, but they threw a lot of spins. And yeah, it's like Paul Felder is like I don't want to compare him. I don't want to bring Vannata back into this, but it does remind me in some ways he's like a trick shot striker. It's all about have a selection of moves that are all vastly different from one another, and then you just kind of throw them when the other guy seems like he might not be expecting something to happen. But you're right, like
Perry, he is a hugely natural. He is a natural clinch striker.
Yes.
And that is his comfort zone. And that was always going to be, although I picked Felder, I think, it was always going to be the issue, is that he's one of the few guys where he's an enormous striker, and I would actually not particularly recommend him to move up a weight class, because normally I feel like being a striker kind of is actually more helpful to go up a weight class. It's easier to hit people. Something we sort of saw with Cormier, Miocic, but
Felder
in this case, Felder isn't really a striker. He does his work in the clinch and on the ground an awful lot of the time. It's where he's the most consistent. And he kept going into the clinch as his safety zone against Mike Perry. And Mike Perry is also someone who thinks he's a striker, but is actually much more comfortable in the clinch.
Yes.
So it's like these two guys both thought they were strikers, kept ending up getting in the clinch, and it just often just ended up going to the guy who was just bigger and more powerful.
It's kind of a throwback war in a way, right? Because this is kind of the mindset that all MMA strikers used to have. Like all the ones who all the early wrestlers who started getting knockouts. This is kind of this is the way they fought. There's a lot of wasted time in between single, hugely powerful strikes. Yeah, it's just a little too flinchy, a little too, I don't know, too nervous to be called nice, comfortable striking. It's certainly not, Israel Adesanya on the feet with just understanding what distance is and how to time things and feeling like you're not improvising or guessing at any moment. These guys are just, even with their own strikes, guessing what the effect might be at every moment. They don't seem to have that confidence. Paul Felder, the thing, he was ragdolled by Perry whenever they tied up. He was a little competitive early, and he did the typical Paul Felder thing of getting to open space in the clinch, landing a shot, immediately getting spun back to the fence, and then sort of trading positions a couple times. But as the fight went on, Perry was just pure strength lifting Felder overhead and out-muscling him and flinging him around in the clinch. That was where Paul Felder was actually most competitive as the fight went on. He started to get lit up more and more. In long range, as Perry would just leap in with these weird shots. So, I don't know. I want to hope that there's more for Mike, Phil. I want to hope that I look at the one feint. I look at the throwaway right hand. I'm like, oh, he seems to have identified that Felder's so worried about the right hand that he's going to get caught by the left hook. But for all I know, it just landed and he kept doing it because it worked.
Yeah. To be honest, there's too many good welterweights in this division.
Yeah, but who's more interesting than Mike Perry? The man's a train wreck. Gotta look. You gotta keep looking. Okay.
Yeah. So who are you going to support in the inevitable Sean Strickland Mike Perry fight?
Oh. I guess I gotta go with Sean. Right. He's my actual. Mike Perry is my adopted son, and he doesn't really like me. So. Yeah, I guess I got to go with Sean. Let's talk about Khalil Roundtree, who decapitated Gokhan Saki.
That isn't here.
I just kind of wanted to. I mean, we haven't mentioned this yet. The Wyman curse struck one last time. It took Holloway Ortega away from us. We haven't mentioned that. But this weekend was supposed to have what probably would have been one of the best featherweight fights of all time. And it didn't. And, our best wishes go out to Max Holloway. The thing is that had the fight gone forward, given the circumstances, it would have been a very bad thing because Holloway is dealing with some serious concussion-like symptoms. And I haven't heard much update on what the actual source of the problem is, but people are starting to lean towards actual concussion sustained in training and probably not helped by a drastic weight cut. So Wyman gave us that, or took that away from us. But he also,
in all seriousness, I would say it's always a bummer to hear about an injury cancellation or a weight cut flop or something. But I would take literally any number of those before having to hear about Holloway getting concussion-like symptoms. I would,
or getting fucking killed in a championship fight. That could happen. If a guy is going in there with concussion symptoms where he can't put his words together properly and he can't react or absorb punishment, he can't brace himself for you're in for some serious danger. if Guy in Holloway's condition had fought on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, and it's something that, you know, we've seen in past fighters like TJ Grant and Chris Holdsworth and so on, that it can end a career, and you know, that is a brutal thing to hear about for one of the most indestructible, likable, kind of awesome champions we could ever ask for. And, you know, his responses afterwards on Twitter to everyone were, you know, pitch perfect.
The
like
classiest.
he's just he's the best, and we wish him the best.
Yeah. And is it confirmed that they are not going forward with trying to slot him right away into an upcoming card? Because I'm
pretty sure they're doing that, because that is one, even just as a discussion, that was one of the most heinous things I've ever heard the UFC even moot.
We should boycott. We just have the episode for that card and just not discuss the main event of Max Holloway. That I hope that for those who are not unaware, they were talking about putting a Max into a rematch with Ortega or whatever, a rescheduled fight like a month from now. Which I'm praying that does not happen, because that would be...
No, Dana White has come out and poured cold water on that idea, I think. So
Okay.
But yeah, let's just make sure that doesn't happen.
Yes, let us emphasize that would be a terrible, terrible fucking idea. And then, you're right. Pat's not here, so fuck Khalil Roundtree and Gokhan Saki and their stupid athletic fight that meant nothing. Let's talk about another stupid athletic fight that did mean something. Paulo Borrachinha Costa fought Uriah Hall, and it was frightening. It was quite frightening to, once again, as it always is. And good. Yeah, Uberlandi Areem is a good fighter. Like, that has to be said. He's not just a giant, muscular wrecking machine. He is. But he works the body exceptionally well. He uses his jab. He has pressure-fighting footwork. He almost always throws in combination, and he uses every weapon available to him. Elbows, punches, knees, every range, in the clinch, all around the idea of pressure. There are still some big question marks about who might be able to beat him going forward. He's been in here against a very limited array of opponents and style matchups. How does Borrachinha react when he is pressured is a very big question that I can't wait for someone to try to answer. But given a very talented and technically skilled striker in Uriah Hall, who nonetheless gave Costa more or less the kind of fight he wanted, he looked sensational. He looked really, really good. And again, very frightening. What did you take away from it?
So I thought it was one of those fights from Hall where he still fought like Uriah Hall, and he still did Uriah Hall things, but he fought really gamely. He made the best out of his skill set despite the flaws, and he just lost because the other guy was better than him. It reminded me a little of his fight against Whittaker, in that he tried as hard as he humanly could, but his tendency to just get slammed into the fence and then to just freeze up, drop his hands, and then sort of river dance away from the fence whilst getting clocked, just eventually ended up getting him finished. But yeah, I was impressed by Borrachinha, at least partially because there were at least one or two points where this fight looked like it was starting to go downhill. And not to be like cliche, not to be a cliche muscle racist, but a lot of the times when a super athletic, bricked up dude, when the fight starts going south, it just carries on going that way. You know, a lot of the time, if someone's clearly put a lot of effort into being just a huge, hulking, intimidating person with covered in beach muscles, you know, it is often tied to a tendency to kind of fade out of fights in a mental sense as well.
Yeah.
But no, like Borrachinha, when he was, there was a point where Hall just started circling off, jabbing, circling off, jabbing, circling off, jabbing, and he just cut in. He he just made sure that he cut inside to a range where he could trade with that jab. It wasn't necessarily that he had any particular defensive technique to get around it. He was just like, I'm gonna just throw until you stop.
It was like purely a style matchup thing, because it was like the way the fight played out was like, okay, Uriah Hall drops Costa, but is still the kind of fighter who hesitates to put two together in open space when he has an opening. And so, like, even though he had that opportunity, and he just went right back to working a jab, a very nice jab from Uriah Hall throughout this fight. Costa just was like, okay, I'm just going to throw three things back every time you try to jab me. I'm going to keep pressuring, and I'm just going to respond the way that a guy with my style should respond. So, like, it's, again, there are questions about how he might adapt against other kinds of opponents, but for this matchup, it was pretty much a perfect performance. Despite getting dropped, he pretty much did everything he needed to do to beat a guy like Uriah Hall. And,
you always got to look and see if there's a consistency in the directionality of movement of a fighter, and then you got to ask yourself, what happens if this is reversed? Can you can win a lot of fights going forward? And Uriah Hall, whilst he fought, I think, a really good fight for who he is. If you compare that Uriah Hall to the one who fought other pressuring strikers like Derek Brunson or Yotko.
Yeah, but even then, if Derek Brunson
this
had
was a
knocked
much
him
better
out,
fight than the Yotko fight that he won.
True.
He fought this far better, but it was still a relative. The baseline style matchup was still a forgiving one. It was still one where he's Borrachinha is someone who likes to push people up against the fence, beat them up, and Hall is kind of a guy who likes to get pushed up against the fence and beaten up.
Yeah. And but as you said, like, there are good signs. I think there are reason to be excited about how he might adjust to harder style matchups, because he did run into difficulties within this style matchup and adapted at least to the point that he could get back to doing what was working. He wasn't put off his stride. And I'm reminded again of the Alawale Bangboj fight, in which he was completely exhausted, and so was Bangboj, and had started to trade with him, and his coaches were capable of, like, redisciplining him to get back to fighting the way he should. So, like, I have high hopes for Borrachinha. He's a physical specimen, but seems to have a fighter's mentality for sure. He does not back down from adversity.
Showed a chin, showed that he could fight through adversity, and showed a much better gas tank.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And a lot of that from just, I think, down to control and staying calm. And he also came out after the fight with his wonderful Instagram post. I'm going to read his comment here. It's just a picture of him hitting Uriah Hall with a left hook. I'm sure of my ability, Borrachinha says. I stepped in that octagon today to show, and that's what I did. I thank God first and every person who cared for me. I appreciate every message and support. I also thank my family, my masters and teammates, my sponsors and supporters, and each of you. Today, more than ever, we are all condoms. So I just want to leave you with that inspiring Instagram post from Paulo Costa. I will leave it to you to figure out
that guy. That guy is definitely someone who's missing out on who's missing out by being part of the Reebok era. Because I think of at least one sponsor that would be lining up.
There is one sponsor in particular that comes to mind. So you go, Borrachinha. I'm a fan. And
I mean, even outside the even if they can get him for outside of that, Condom Depot definitely might want to look him up.
Just imagine a pair of trunks Condom Depot sponsors, and it just says "We are all condoms" in red on his ass. That's perfect. All right. So Paulo Costa lighting the world on fire in more ways than one. Finally, let's close things out. Rafael Assunção and Rob Font. These guys fought at bantamweight. Rob Font has been looking very good lately. He knocked out Tomas Almeida in his last fight. The question was he going to be able to use his reach to give Rafael Assunção enough problems that he could start creating openings for the right hand? And the answer was no. Assunção answered the question quite flatly and simply, and fought, as he typically does, a pretty perfect fight to just sort of shut Rob Font out for 15 minutes. What did you take away from it, man?
So One of the things I took away from this fight, actually, and I just got to shout him out, was that Dominic Cruz did a really good job of commenting this one.
Yes, he did. Absolutely. I'm glad you said that.
I mean, a lot of the because a lot of the time you may feel like he tends to pick the guy who's more like him, but in this case there was neither guy who was really like that, and so he did a really fantastic job of kind of picking up on a lot of the subtleties of what was going on, and it was one of those fights where I was happy to see people seeming really jazzed about Rafael Assunção.
I know.
Like both the commentators and people were cheering for him after he won, and I was just like, wow, it's great to see.
Yeah, I think Font has some momentum, I guess, because of the Almeida knockout or whatever. But also, like, I think commentary had something to do with the fact that nobody was bored. Things happened. A couple things happened, like a big knockdown in the first round to make this exciting. But largely, it was a typical Rafael Assunção fight. He sort of took the fight out of the fight in a lot of ways, and just chess-like capitalized on all the openings given to him and didn't really force much action.
I think it was one of the better ones that we've seen because it was one of the more three-dimensional performances we've seen from him.
That's a very good point.
I mean, a lot of the time when he goes, he's one of these fighters that you can see a 3D game from him, but it's often when he's just got the guy outmatched. It's like, we'd see this occasionally from like Gleison Tebow, right? Occasionally they'd put him up against someone who just didn't belong in there with him, and he'd just truck them instantaneously, and you'd be like, oh yeah, that's why he's good. But in this case, it was him against Assunção against a high-end, athletic, skilled, bigger, younger bantamweight. And there was a clear progression for what he was doing. He started the first round. I think he probably pretty much lost about 4 minutes of it, just feeling Font out. Didn't really do much apart from try to get the timing down on Font's combinations, and then just clocked him with the right hand. And then when Font came out ready for that in the second round, he got an immediate takedown, went back to kind of classic WEC Rafael Assunção with the wrestling and top game.
Yeah, it was like he masterfully played the fight as it changed. As the fight transformed as a result of his successes, he would then find different ways to have success. The early takedown, there was also, like, to me, the story of this fight is in how Assunção took away Rob Font's jab. The punch was genuinely giving him trouble early. Like, the reach was an issue, as it is always going to be. If a guy with arms as long as Font's against a little tiny bantamweight like Rafael Assunção. But Assunção, as the fight went on, like, it was great three-dimensionally in that he could answer with every phase, but also at, like, seemingly every range, and in multiple, I don't know, in ways that played off of each other really well. So he was countering the jab early on with the overhand right. He was just giving Font, like, things to worry about, and he got that to work. I think he threw away a left hook and came back with the right hand. That was what produced the knockdown. As the fight went on, he started to mix it up. He started to counter the jab with really, really hard low kicks, which is like an MMA staple. If somebody is stepping in hard with their jab and committing their way to their front foot, you smash them on the thigh every time they throw it, and they will quickly learn their lesson. And then he was countering it, threatening it with the takedowns, dipping under anytime that Font came forward. And then he finished the fight masterfully countering Font's jab with the jab, where Font sort of lost his sense of confidence in his range. And Assunção started to move around, look for his openings. Every single time he would catch Font's jab in his glove, every time Font was near enough to touch Assunção's defenses, Assunção reacted the way you should, by stepping forward and landing his own jab. He knew, okay, Font's in range, but before he can do anything with that information, I'm going to punish him. And so it was a kind of fight where, like, Font's confidence, his ability to read where Assunção was going to be, his ability to change was taken away from him because it all comes off of the jab for a lot of fighters, but especially for Font. And Assunção came up with this, like, multi-layered way of taking that launching pad away. And so Font just, like, he couldn't adjust. He couldn't do anything. Assunção just was like 1 or 2 steps ahead of him the entire time. And yeah, people cheered, and it was nice. And Rafael Assunção has only lost to TJ Dillashaw since 2011. So, respect for one of the most underrated fighters in the entire game. He is extremely good at this. And it was nice. It warmed my heart to see him getting a little love, because he has always been one of my favorites. And that pretty much does it for UFC 226, I think. And that does it for us. It was a good card. It, our thoughts go out to Max Holloway, and we hope that he recovers very well. We're disappointed we didn't get to see that fight, but in the end, it has to have been for the best. At least that these symptoms were spotted and the fight was canceled before something really, really tragic happened. And even without it, we got a really, really solid card and an extremely feel-good moment to cap things off with Daniel Cormier winning the heavyweight title and just being the daddest man who ever lived. Phil, before we wrap up, do you have anything coming out this week?
Just got the preview for the ever-thrilling, I believe it is JDS Blagoy Ivanov card, which is coming up next. Am I correct?
Yeah, it's always a good sign when you sort of like awkwardly feel your way through the names of the people in the main event.
Yeah. I remember that JDS guy.
Oh yeah, I've seen him before, I think.
Yeah, which should be a great card. That should be a pretty good card apart from the main event. A lot of interesting fights on that.
Yeah,
I think we might be looking at some of those in a bonus episode. But yep, so look out for our preview, which will be appropriately sad and despairing.
All right, great. As for me, I don't know why I'm doing this, but immediately I started working on a piece that was about Ngannou Lewis after the event ended, because I was captivated by how bad this fight was. I'm thinking of going in the direction of calling it Ngannou versus Lewis, fixing the worst fight ever. I kind of want to talk about like what went wrong, why nothing happened, and what it means for both of these guys. I want to give some context to this shit show.
And you also know you're going to be, as you said, we're going to be forced to watch that again, right?
Yeah. I may as well get an early start and study it now, because I will be rewatching it as a main event on the MMA Depressed. I already know.
Fantastic. Yeah, you're going to be like our resident subject matter expert on this fight. You're going to be just like, oh yes, and by the way, as we come up to 2 minutes 23 of the second round, you may notice that Derek Lewis is going to throw a kick. It's going to hit Ngannou's arm.
Yes, and
you're gonna know this shitty ass abomination inside out.
Watch at 3 minutes of the third round. Note that nothing happens for several seconds. You'll be astounded. Yeah, it's going to be great. So look forward to that. And thank you all for joining us for this edition of Heavy Hands. As we said, next week's card is going to be covered, at least in part, by a bonus episode. So if you were not on the Heavy Hands Patreon, check that out. It is actually a pretty good card. It has quite a lot of good meat on the undercard portion. We've got like silly shit like Sage Northcutt versus Zach Otto, if that's your thing. But we've got cool shit like Dennis Bermudez versus Rick Glenn. We've got the return of Chad Mendez against Miles Jury. We've got Eddie Wineland versus Alejandro Perez. We've got Darren Elkins versus Alexander Volkanovski, which I think is an especially good fight. It's a pretty damn good card for just a random, FS1 card with complete nonsense in the main event. So look forward to that. Check us out on Patreon. It's just $3 a month to get access to our bonus episodes. And until next time, you should also find us on social media before I just leave you out cold. You can find Phil at Evil Greg Jackson on Twitter, and you can find me at Boxing Bush. That's BUSCH, and you can find both of our various works on BloodyElbow.com. So, until next time, thank you all for listening, and if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.